Yeah.
That's cool.
All right.
All right.
What's up, you guys? I got a real special guest for you guys here today. Someone I've been listening to for a very long time, Kipp Sorensen from the Order of Man podcast, co-host. How are you, buddy?
Good, man.
Dude,
it's an honor to be here.
It's an honor to have you. I mean, really, I've been listening to you guys for forever, and we'll get into that more.
Okay.
But I just want to say thank you for everything you guys do. And
sure.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, because I don't want to get too much in. I want you to kind of have the light.
Yeah, the little bit of an intro.
Yeah. Give yourself. Well, tell us about yourself.
Well, it's really interesting, right? We can go the Order of Man approach, and then which isn't really my day job, or it's only a fraction.
That's
of
just
who
a
I
little
am.
bit. Oh, I know.
Totally.
We're gonna get into everything. I know more than you think about you.
Oh, okay.
And I've been listening for a while, so I know about all the Microsoft stuff you do. I know about all the things.
Very cool.
I just want you to be the one to tell it.
Yeah,
That's
love it.
it.
I love it.
So go right.
So I'm actually the chief people officer, and everyone's like, "What?" And then you'll say "what" twice when I say HR, because I am the last person that anyone would assume that would be over human resources at a company. But I like it, and I like it because I can't stand the typical HR mentality.
So you're in there to change it.
Dude, I'm there to disrupt it.
I can see that.
Yeah, I can't stand the pandering. I call it typical HR departments are pandering departments.
Okay,
That's not our style.
That
right?
is true.
So anyhow, I've been doing actually IT consulting for years. In the process of switching over to the chief people officer, which I'd be over culture, people development, leadership development, that kind of stuff.
Okay, yeah.
HR is an element of that, of course. That's my day job.
Okay, and then at night.
Yeah, at night or during the week. So I co-host on the Order of Man podcast on the Ask Me Anything episode. It comes out every Wednesday. And then I also help Ryan run the Iron Council, which is our exclusive brotherhood. Yeah. Roughly about, I think we're up to maybe 1,200 men globally. That's part of the Iron Council.
Isn't that
Man, if I pull some numbers, it's crazy, like how many different countries. We have guys from Australia, from across Europe, Canada, all across the U.S. that's part of that group. And so I help run that group as well.
That's beautiful. I actually met a guy yesterday. He's a local gun store owner and 15-year law enforcement officer, SWAT guy. I did a podcast with him just last night, and somehow he happened to name drop the podcast. Your guys is the Order of Man. And I was like, guess who's coming here tomorrow? He's like, who? He said, Ryan. I said, no, but Kipp. He's like, are you serious?
He's like, who's Kipp?
No, he knew Kipp. No, don't do that.
I'm just
don't do that. A lot of people know Kipp. They know Order of Man, they know Kipp. As soon as I said Kipp, he's like, oh, yeah, for sure.
That's cool.
The Ask Me Anything is a very big deal, just so you know.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, all humility, like true humility here, I just feel like Ryan and I sit down and have a conversation about some topics that get thrown at us. And that's it. That's all we're doing is just having a conversation. But kind of back to what we were saying before we hit record, man, the power of a conversation, right? The power of presence with you and I just throwing out ideas and having a conversation and having the present of mind and hearing your inputs and putting that on the table for me to consider in regards to how you show up as a man and vice versa is just powerful.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
That's why I want to bring you on specifically, because I know I actually want to get more into you specifically as far as the things you do, who you are, what makes you tick. Yeah. Because those Ask Me Anythings, your responses, I always find very valuable because they're very in-depth and they're very, very well thought out. And you have the perfect blend of that masculine side and of that very thoughtful. And I hate to split the two, but nowadays it seems like, if you're even emotional, that they say, oh, you're not
must
masculine.
Not be masculine.
Yeah, but you come at it from a very great perspective, and I hope and I want to bring that to my audience now to show that there could be a different way. You could be more intentional.
I love that. And why? Because what's the default mentality, right? Like I did this to my wife once. I said, hey, honey, what are the characteristics of masculinity? Mm-hmm.
What was it? I'm
years
curious
ago.
It
was like over-domineering. It was anger. It was all these quote-unquote stereotypical toxic traits that we think of. And that's why, do you ever listen to Jack Donovan at all?
Of course, I have his books.
I mean, that's what I love about Jack's strategy. Like, we did a Man Uncaged event earlier this year.
I tried to get in. But
and Jack's presentation, what I loved about it was, he said, culture we have seen a reduction of the value of masculinity in culture because masculine men have removed themselves from the things that create culture, which are the arts.
Go deeper on that.
Which are the arts. And so at one point, look at the history of mankind, right? What kind of men created art and architecture and music? They were masculine men.
They were the most masculine
And then
of men.
over time, masculine men have gone, oh, that's feminine. We're not going to do those things.
Yeah, the artsy thing.
Exactly, but it's
did
the
say
arts.
that in his book.
Exactly,
Yeah,
but
true.
it's the arts that help form culture. And I'm like, oh, I love
That
that.
is such a good
I can't
point.
I'm here in Vegas, right? Because
Yeah.
my daughters are in a cheer
I'm
competition.
so glad
right?
that she's a
This
cheerleader and she
weekend,
brought
yeah.
you here.
And you know what I think all the time when I watch cheer is like, how refreshing would it be to see a masculine man cheer?
Truthfully,
seriously,
truthfully,
like
because
it bothers me.
It does because we definitely need a different what's the word, appearance for what it is, a different face of what
Totally.
masculinity is.
Totally, and that can be present in multiple facets, and not just in the
Stereotypical
stereotypical
way.
Big truck and blue collar job.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's where the distinction is between that newer masculinity and that more traditional masculinity.
Totally.
And I think that with time, people thought that now masculinity, those traits became toxic.
Yeah.
So now you have the two opposing factors. You have the complete masculine side where now they're thinking, oh, I can't be emotional. I can't think. I can't speak from the heart. I can't move with feelings.
Totally.
And then you have the other end. And so I feel like that's a great blend that you're able to bring to the table, and that I'm hoping that we can spread that word more.
Yeah.
You get what I mean?
I love it. Well, and let's be frank, why does that happen? Why do we polarize in conversation? Because we're lazy in thought, right? Like I've always felt like if you're not critically thinking, it's because you're mentally lazy.
Very true.
And that's why everyone's a Democrat or a Republican. That's
Yes.
because they're this or they're that. Is because you don't want to actually consider the complexity of a human and just say they are who they are.
One thing you always...
and learn about them.
Very true. One thing you always say on your Ask Me Anythings is you always say, you didn't finish that thought.
Yeah.
You didn't finish that thought. You had the thought, but you didn't continue along that critical
To
thinking.
follow it to a conclusion.
To
of
a
some
conclusion,
sort.
yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
Totally.
But I want to get into your more kind of personal life. What's your relationship situation looking like? You're married?
Yeah, married.
Second marriage?
Second marriage. I got married young. I think within 2 to 3 years of getting married. Got divorced. We had 2 kids together.
Wow. Okay.
And it was brutal. I mean, we could get into all this, and I'm actually an open book around it. But got divorced, was single for probably about, 5-6 years. Thought I was actually broken. I dated a bunch of girls that I'm just like, I just can't commit, like something's wrong with me. Yeah. And then I met my wife. I was like, oh, no, nothing's wrong with me. It was all the girls. Because I have no problems committing once I found the right person,
Yeah, that's actually, I had the same thing, the divorce, and then I went through a little phase where I was just kind of all over the place. You think it's you, but you come to find out.
Yeah.
And so you had the 2 kids with the first wife.
Yep. So my wife and I, Asia is her name. We have his, hers, and ours. So I have 2 boys from a previous marriage.
Okay.
She has 1 boy from her previous marriage, and then we have 3 kids together. So
Math, I got lost.
So
in
we
the
got
math.
6 kids.
6 total.
6 kids, but it always felt like it was always fluctuating. It was like when we first got married, it was like we have 1 kid because her kid was with us full time, and then all of a sudden we'd have 3 kids, and then 1 kid, 3 kids, 1 kid, and then we have the 3.
I am so glad that you just said that dynamic, because that's been. Sorry, my air compressor's going.
Oh, you're
off.
fine.
If you hear that, it'll shut off in a minute. I thought the bar.
All right, are you okay? Just keep going.
Let me go turn it off. So I'm actually very glad you said that, because that's the biggest issue I've been having lately, is because my first wife, same thing, 2 boys, myself, and then we ended up divorcing. I got with my new wife who has 3 kids. So now I got the 3 bonus kids.
But none together.
None together.
Okay.
We want to have the R's. We want to have the R's.
Yeah.
But we're so stuck on his and hers that it's hard to focus on the R's.
It's tough.
And truthfully, as I told you, we were talking before the camera came on.
Yeah.
That's why I would want to pick your brain, because I've been having the hardest time finding the balance of being that masculine leader when there's so many different dynamics at play. There's so many different households, different rules, different parents, and I just kind of don't even know where to begin.
Yeah.
Honestly, how was that? How was that dynamic for you? Like, how did that?
Oh, man.
How did that play out?
Well, I think if I had to like psychoanalyze and like look back at it, you know, because we've been married for 15 years.
Oh, beautiful.
So 15 years ago, when we got married, her son was 3. So for all intents and purposes, his life has not existed without me in it. Like, he doesn't remember.
But is his dad around?
So his dad lives
Because I have all of ours are under 9, just so you know.
Got it.
All babies.
So his dad lives in Portugal. So his dad wasn't around.
Got it.
So every so often we'd fly him over to Portugal for the summer or whatever, right? And so Dad's involved as much as we could get him involved with that geographic distance. But for all intents and purposes, I was Dad.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife would be okay with me saying this, so don't think I'm speaking ill of her, because we've talked about this quite a bit in regards to how we approach things early on. And I think what she did is what most women do when they get divorced. And I think they feel that they can still have their little white picket fence around their beautiful house and just swap out who Dad is.
Yeah, it's a very good point.
I really do think and unfairly, I think they put that on the new man that they marry. That they marry you and they go, oh, well, you know what? He's out of the picture. I'll marry this guy and he will be Dad.
He will take over.
And with the expectation that it's going to be the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think we did think it was going to be the same thing. I think we fell into the fallacy that it's not different and it's just the same and whatever. And that is complete just bullshit.
That is exactly.
It is not the same.
That is. I mean, as soon as I came into the picture now, and she came into the picture, it was like we just thought that we could just press the play button again,
and we'll magically just have this family, right?
And for the first year, it was almost like we were all brainwashed.
Yeah.
If you really, I know it sounds weird,
totally.
But like in retrospect, it's like. But then as time progresses and things get more dynamic, and I got my kids involved and now all this kind of stuff, there's a lot more emotion that plays. There's a lot more reality that plays. It's not just saying daddy, mommy anymore. Now there's actual lessons that have to be taught and intentionality that has to be given.
Totally.
And that's where I get confused.
Yeah.
It's that balance.
Yeah, and it's not the same.
Can't be.
It's not the same.
It's not.
Yeah, and I think we do a disservice to our spouses and actually a disservice to our kids. And to be frank, we take away the respect and honor that the biological parents deserve, even though that we're not together with them.
Yeah,
very
valid point.
So by me stepping in and Asia assuming that like, oh, you're just gonna be his dad now and everything's gonna be normal. No, that's taken away from his dad. I'm not his dad.
But that's a very good point. But did you make that loud and clear from the beginning?
Oh, no. We approached this thinking that it was all going to be fine.
So now, in retrospect, for the people who might be going into a situation where their woman has some children, and so they don't make the same mistakes, and they can approach it in a more realistic expectation, what recommendations do you have for those type of conversations?
Yeah.
For a guy to say, hey, I understand you have kids. I understand I have kids. But here's some groundwork.
Yeah.
What does that sound like?
In hindsight, what I would approach this situation from the perspective, I'm willing to step into this position. And by the way, you said something about like, presiding over your family, right? Like how do you lead? Well, you can't lead by authority. Not when you're not the biological parent.
100%.
Influence is your moral authority, and your influence is all that you get. Right?
100%. I'm going to pick you on that, but go ahead.
So with that said, I think I would have came into the picture and said, hey, I love you. I'm willing. I'm not required, by the way, but I'm willing to step into this role knowing that I'm going to have to take care of this kid that's not mine. That's not my responsibility, right?
So making these things loud and clear.
Yeah, and making it super loud and clear, but I want to be very clear. I'm not his dad. I will never be his dad. I will love him. I will serve him. I will protect him. I will do everything in my power to be a person of influence in his life, but I am not his father. And don't you dare put that on me.
Or
don't
on
you
them.
dare take that away from his father either.
Oh, wow.
And let's address this the way it is.
Yeah.
But I don't know, and I'll be honest, there's no way I had that clarity then.
100%.
I have that now, and we both, and if you talk to my wife, she would say the same thing. It is not the same.
Yeah.
And it's really important.
It took her time to get there, do
Yeah,
you think?
because for sure, it took us like probably 10 years. Like if I had to say the number one problem in our marriage over the last 15 years, it has been how we parent her son. It has been the number one dilemma for us.
Wow. See, I would say how we parent each other's kids is a big issue, and like that kind of stuff.
But see, my kids we were summer kids with mine. So that wasn't a
only got 'em
problem.
over the summer.
We're on holiday, right? And so it's
Yeah.
always like short term. Like if they're little bastards, it's like, just push through. We got 2 weeks and they're leaving. Her son, on the other hand, is under our roof 24/7. And it was a conflict of how I treated him versus how she treated him. Her expectations of how I should show up, his expectations how he should treat me, and that whole dynamic. It was one of the most toughest things we ever dealt with in our marriage, for sure.
That sounds tough. So then, okay, so you had hers full time, yours were summer kids. When they came, your kids, when they came, was there ever a visual difference in how you treated them? Even though you didn't want to be this way, was there ever from inside you're like, that's mine?
Yeah. Without a doubt, I felt like I didn't.
You felt like you were being fair.
I really felt like I was consistent with all three boys.
Yeah.
But I thought I was super consistent with all three.
I can't believe you're saying 3 boys because this is the same in my situation. I love it.
If you ask my wife or you ask her son, and his name's Kiave. If you ask Kiave, and Kiave is Hawaiian. So if everyone's like, what the hell? What kind of name is that? So if you ask Kiave, it was, I'm easier and softer on Ian than I am him.
That's what.
Which was the next kid close to him in age. Right?
Yeah.
They're like to be clear, they're actually good friends. They both live in Barcelona right now in Spain.
Oh, wow.
And they're going to school together. So they're kind of pals.
Yeah.
So it was really easy for Kiave to compare himself to Ian because they're buddies. They're always hanging around. And then, but he always felt like I was way easier on Ian than I ever was for him.
Has he ever voiced that to you?
And yeah, for sure.
Has he ever done it at a young age? To where you are feeling, because when they're older, these kind of conversations, we don't even have to be talking about this. Because
totally.
When they're older, we could talk about it and just be easy and
work
understand.
through it with them,
But when they're kids and there's so much emotion involved, and now the kid is like, Mommy, how come Daddy only loves his kids, but they don't love me as much? How come Daddy never punishes his kids, but he's willing to punish me? And me, like the dumbass, I'm like, I don't know. I didn't think I was punishing anybody. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Shut up. Right? So but when you're in that moment, did he ever voice it to you at a young age?
No, he never. When he was little, he never brought that up. It actually wasn't. I did a lot of sports and a lot of things with him, and so we were constantly together. And my boys were only summertime. So the thing that would come up when he was younger was kind of like I would almost try to make up for time with my boys when they'd come visit.
Yeah, of course.
Because my time's limited.
Very limited.
And then he would see a shift, right? Like, why is Dad spending more time with Ian whenever Ian's here and less time with me?
Yeah, 100%.
And we'd try to we only get Ian for, 4 weeks.
X amount of time,
So he's trying to spend extra time with him. And so I think let's be frank, we're meaning-making machines, right? I'm sure Kiabe's adding all kinds of meaning when he was little, each of those things. But I think he did communicate to Asia a couple times of like, why is he nicer to Ian than he is to me?
Yeah. Has she ever came to you and from that mother perspective?
When they were younger, this was a hot topic, and I would constantly tell Asia, I was like, well, because, and I really felt this way. I was like, well, because I don't have them full time. Right, like
that should be the honest answer, though.
Yeah, when Ian's here for summer and we're having fun, I'm on vacation mode, right? Like everything's fun. Yeah. But when he leaves, we're back to the grind, right? And so I kind of felt like my number one priority is how I raise Kiave more than anybody else. Why? Because he's in my care 24/7, right? And so, versus this part-time kid that would show up every so often that happened to be biological. And so I was easier on them. And I was harder on Kiave because Kiave was, to be frank, kind of more my son.
Oh my God,
than my own boys were.
I tell people that all the time when they say, I'm like, it's the biggest weirdest feeling is to feel when someone else's kids are almost becoming more your kids than your kids are becoming your kids.
Yeah, it's very odd. And there's, don't get me wrong, maybe there's some ego there too, right? Like, and there's a little bit of a write-off, right? My influence on my older boys is minimal, right? Mm-hmm. Their mom had more kind of influence in their life because they're with her full time, and I'd only have them during the summer or whatever. And so there's this pressure that, like, if anybody's going to turn out well, it should be Kiave, and that shit's on me.
On you.
Where the other boys, how they turn out.
Because your stamp is on them.
Exactly. But how my other boys turn out, my biological kids, is a little bit like, well, I had some limited moments there, and, you know,
of course.
If they go south, I'll blame my ex, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Was there ever from the ex, was she in the picture? Let me ask you that. First, were you guys communicating ever throughout this time, or only during pickup and drop off?
Oh man, my ex was. Mm-hmm. She's great now. Super tough. Like super tough.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like we have the same
Really
paths
tough.
because my ex was the same, and she completely.
Yeah, she even did some Hail Marys when we attempted to, like, when she found out that Asia and I were getting married, she did some Hail Mary, like, to
Moves.
my wife, like, don't marry him, he's a scumbag, and, just try to, like,
My goodness,
mess
you.
up my life, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
No, there was, let me just say it this way, there was a great deal of hurt from her perspective, and that hurt was present all the way up until we got married, into years after I got married. I don't think there's a lot of suffering and pain that she didn't really deal with until after she got married. She kind of settled
Then
down,
she started, that's fair.
And that took a while. Like I think she was probably still single, probably 5 years into my marriage. You know what I mean? And so until she kind of settled, I there's some animosity there. And I try not to be overly judgmental here, because, like, we all have our meaning and our realities that we've created, and trust me, I was no saint. Like, I see my failure in that first marriage, and I will own that without a doubt. Yeah. And so did she deserve what she got from me? And the answer is no, she didn't deserve that at all. And so her suffering and pain and hurt or whatever that I created is valid from her perspective.
That's very fair. Yeah.
To kind of despise me.
No, for sure. And may I ask, if it's not too personal, how did it end up you only getting weekends?
Yeah, actually, it was really kind of tough scenario. So when we went, I was living in Arizona. We got divorced, and a lot of guys, like, I don't want to be like a marriage counselor here or a divorce attorney, but everything's like it's calculated.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's a calculator that the state uses to determine this, right?
Yes.
And so it's pretty straightforward. And so we got the custody calculator out and divvied up things. And the way it worked originally was I had, what was it? Every weekend, and I had Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Okay.
And that was the original setup. And then we'd split summer, and then you had the holiday split and all that kind of jazz. We're both living in Arizona, and that was the arrangement. And I had a lot of inconsistency in my life as a kid.
Okay.
And I always felt it was really bad to be inconsistent. And later on, I found out it is actually bad. Consistency, a lack of consistency actually to a child creates insecurity and unsafety, right? And so it really bothered me that my boys were, like, bouncing, right? It was like mom's on Monday, daddy on Tuesday, mom on Wednesday, daddy on Thursday.
It's pain.
They're spending in my house on 2 nights a week. They're jumping to mom's. And I'm like, you know what? This isn't conducive. This is not what's best for the boys. And so I asked my ex, I said, hey, they're with you all week. If it's okay with you, though, I'll come grab them on Tuesday and hang out with them and play in their room, and I'll stay, keep
away
my
from
distance,
you.
Or we'll go out and grab dinner. But I don't want them back to my place, sleep on a couch, because I had no money to actually, like, have a home that had a bedroom for them.
Wow.
Oh, dude, you have no idea.
I don't have no idea.
When I got divorced, it was, let's just say it this way. After child support got calculated, I literally remember laying it out on a piece of paper and going, this is impossible.
Oh
like,
my God.
This will not work. Like, there is no money to split
to make this
between
work.
you, the government, and bills. Like, this is, I don't have an option.
Yeah.
Like, this is not going to work. Yeah, it was disastrous. Anyhow, my point being is, I didn't like that inconsistency, so I made that arrangement with her, and then I just had them on the weekends, and I just go hang out with them during the week.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's where I'm at weekends. I got mine on my two boys on weekends.
So then, it was, a few months after that, or actually we had a whole summer, and so I had them full time during my first summer, right?
That must have been
Arizona.
amazing.
Dude, it was a disaster.
Oh, disaster!
No, it was a disaster because I realized
like
this doesn't work for work. This is not conducive with my job. At the time, I worked from like 7 to 4 p.m. Well, daycare doesn't open until 9. Then you got to pick up your kids by 3.
Yeah, how is
this going to even work, right? Like, I was constantly just like stretched. And this is in the world of like no one was working remote. Right?
Yeah,
like, this is
everyone's
a long time ago.
Clock in and clock out.
Clock in it. Yeah, and it was quite the disaster. I really had to. That was one of the lessons at that time in my life that I realized, like, you cannot multitask. Kipp, you cannot come home with your boys and pretend to be a father and try to get work done. It's never going to work.
That's where I've been at.
Dude,
that's where I've been at. So what's the alternative? How do you get work done and be a father?
You're a father until they go to bed.
Fair. Yeah,
and I literally had to approach it from the perspective. I've been trying not to swear as much, but I really had to approach it from the perspective of, like, I'd come home and I might have this whole backpack full of bricks, like, weighing me down, and I had to have the mentality of just like, you know what, fuck it.
Yeah.
Just throw the bag outside. I'm gonna play Legos and I'm having fun.
And
then once they go to bed,
go back out there.
Then I'll
and
grab that bag and then I'll be like, oh, it's gonna be a long night. But if I tried to do both of them together, it was never going to work. I lashed out as a complete asshole to my kids or whatever. Yeah, back to your question. How did summer end up happening? So she was, my ex was like, hey, I want to go to school, right? We got married. I went to school full time and I was working. We got pregnant fairly quick. And so when you're in your younger years, when you don't have like a real legit career, daycare is more expensive than someone working, right?
Daycare is more expensive than anything.
So once we realized we're expecting, I was like, hey, it doesn't make sense for us to put the kid in daycare. You stay home full time. I'll work full time, and I'm going to go to school full time to double down and make this work so we can get done through school as fast as possible. So she didn't have that chance for any type of schooling. And so we got divorced, and she was like, hey, I want to go to school up in Utah, to university. And I was like, all right, I'll follow you. You know, I have no one in Arizona.
You have nothing there, yeah.
Yeah, I might as well just go up there. And so
you're following the kids, essentially.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And so I moved up to Utah. Unfortunately, she went to a college like in this small town. And I was like, I can't find a job there. So I was still like an hour and a half away. But it
close
was
enough.
Better than 12-hour drive, right? And so, anyhow, so I moved up there. And then eventually she was just like, hey, I'm bailing. And I was like,
what does that mean?
Well, I'm going to go to get my master's or my PhD from like, I think it was like Purdue or whatever. And I was kind of like, to be frank, I was like, no, you're not.
Yeah,
right?
not with my kids.
You can't just bail.
Yeah, you can't just bounce.
And then all of a sudden she's in Arizona like in 2 days.
Mm.
Filed in Arizona. I go to court in Arizona and they go, well, we can't restrict. You don't even live in Arizona. I'm like, neither does she. And they're like, no, she filed in Arizona. She never showed residence in the state of Utah. You live out of state. You have no jurisdiction on whether your kids leave state because you don't even live in our state.
Oh,
does that make sense?
My God,
and
yes.
So I was just like,
oh no.
Yeah, and then so once that happened, then I ended up being a summer dad, right? Because she kind of moved around between Purdue and Cincinnati and Colorado, like kind of all over the place.
Yeah, and what did that feel like? Losing, I mean, I know it's rough, but let's just be honest about it. What did that feel like from a father, masculine perspective? Yeah. It's almost losing your kids for
Without
a lot
of doubt. Well, and anyone that's been divorced, and you know this, there's a number of things. First off, the system assumes that we actually don't give a shit about our kids.
Fair.
And that just pisses me off in the first place. And then you get to this feeling of like, all right, hold on a second. So I'm going to bust my ass. And then I'm going to pay not to see my kids, right?
That's
it's ridiculous.
It's beyond it.
Yeah, and no, I was irate. I was like completely pissed off about it, right? And then you start running to all the other stories, right? It's like then back to she's going to get married, and who's this other guy in her life, or who are these guys that she's bringing around the house,
and around the kids,
right? And like, and I'm generalizing. I realize I'm generalizing this for everybody, but like, let's be frank. In most women that get divorced, what's the drawback to them?
Nothing.
What's the drawback of divorcing me when you can move wherever you want?
You still pay her.
I pay huge amounts of child support.
She gets her kids.
And she gets her kids full time.
And she can still go find other men if she wants to.
Yeah. Like literally, what is the drawback? There is zero drawback.
That's why most divorces are initiated by women.
Yeah, 60%.
I heard
more,
it was 70.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong, but I heard it was up to 70%.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's no drawback to it. Now we say that. There's no drawback on paper.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like legally.
Yeah. Now, is there drawback? Oh, hell yeah.
But they don't realize it until after, usually.
Exactly. And the repercussions of that decision will probably, I don't even think we've realized it yet. Well, I'll realize it when my son Ian gives me a call, and he's 25, he's still single, and he's like, Dad, I just have commitment problems.
Yeah, really.
Right? And then I'll be like, raising my hand going, yeah, that might be my fault. Yeah. Right? And now we start seeing the repercussions of how we showed up as parents on our kids.
My goodness.
You know.
When they started coming around on the weekends and you had Kiave?
Yeah.
Kiave? You had Kiave full time. Once your kids started coming around on the weekends, actually, let me ask you this. While they were still, where are they now in Arizona? Your kids?
Now they're all grown
but
up.
But when they
first moved out?
Yeah, when they first moved out and you were with Kiave and your kids were where?
So I'm in Utah, and my two boys ended up moving out to Purdue, I think, out towards Pittsburgh, right? Is that Pittsburgh? Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania,
Yeah,
okay.
They moved out to Pennsylvania.
So while they're in Pennsylvania, you're out here doing the dad thing.
Yeah, with the new kid.
With a new kid.
Yeah.
Who's not yours.
Yeah.
You're picking the kid up. You're spinning him around, for example.
Yeah.
You don't feel any kind of guilt towards your own kids? Towards like, I'm literally building this relationship with this kid. And no hate towards stepkid. I love my stepkid. I just mean, it's like a true guilt. It's like, okay, let's go out and let's go get frozen yogurt. Yeah. And we're sitting there having frozen yogurt, and I just feel this overwhelming sense of guilt because my kids aren't with me.
Yeah, totally. Every single time, like, Kiabi did something great, right? Like, we taught him how to ride a bike. It crossed my mind. I'm not even doing this with my own kid.
How do you defeat that?
Constantly.
Do you know that's the main crippling? The only thing that I cannot defeat right now in my own life is that guilt. I can't defeat it. I don't know how. No matter what I do, no matter what I try. I've even reached out to Ryan Mickler.
Yeah.
I've even reached out on his live, and he's actually put me on screen with him, and we've talked about it. I just can't seem to knock the guilt. No matter what I do, if I even hug one of the kids, I'm just like, I'm not even hugging my own kid. Like, my own kid is at home laying in bed by himself, and I'm here like tucking this kid in.
Yeah.
No offense, I hate to say this kid.
Yeah, I understand.
But I just get so emotional about it.
But I think at the root of that is expectations are interesting, right? Because and maybe we don't even have to use that term. Should haves and shouldn't be's can be very dangerous, right? Because when we hold on, like, it shouldn't be this way, right? Or I shouldn't have to do this. And anyone listening, we do this all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you have an upset with your wife, for instance, the upset with your wife are probably more likely around some form of expectation. Of, I shouldn't have to be doing this. Right? I remember Asia and I were like going to marriage counseling, and one of her things that she hated about marriage counseling always was, it shouldn't be this hard. I should be able to this should just work.
The marriage
right?
just works.
It shouldn't require work, right? To have a happy marriage.
That's a very common thought, which is scary.
Yeah, totally. But here's the deal. Back to your point earlier. Well, then finish it. Finish that statement. It shouldn't be this way. Okay, but it is.
That's continuing that thought.
So what the fuck are you going to do about it then?
Yeah.
Like,
but what
do in reality?
But what do you do? I mean, in a situation that's so real? There's nothing realer than that.
Yeah.
That's the realest reality a father can face, is fighting your own guilt based off the kids that aren't even there.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, at least for me, my key thing was I have to just, whether I like it or not, the cards are stacked against me.
Fair.
They're stacked against me in a financial way from the court system. They're stacked against me because, at least earlier on in our divorce, she spoke ill of me with the kids, right? And so there's this concern that they're going to hate me just strictly based on what she's telling them all the time and who knows what else. The cards are all stacked against me. So, you know what? Then that means that I can't just be a good dad. I have to show up in this world in a way more powerful way that's like transcendent to all of those barriers that I've now created. And I like that idea that I created them. Right?
Yeah, 100%.
Right? And so, but that's what I'm dealt with now. So I can't change the past. I can't change, the decisions that we made in the past. But what I can do is rise up and deal with them the best possible way I can. And because let's be frank, like even think about the story of my ex-wife speaking ill to my boys, right? If I'm pondering on that a lot and I'm assuming, because I am assuming, right? If I'm assuming that, she's probably talking bad about me all the time and blah, blah, blah. How do I show up if I assume that all the time? How do I show up when I see my boy? I'm going to assume what?
That he doesn't love me. He doesn't love you.
That
he
he's
thinks
this
these
and
ill
that,
things
right?
about you.
And so I'm going to show up withdrawn.
That's a good point.
I'm going to create a self-fulfilling prophecy.
You're already going to come in insecure to the
Totally.
situation as a father.
because I'm assuming he already thinks of me ill.
Wow.
And so I'm going to show up in a way, like destructive way, withdrawn why?
Just from the thoughts that you're creating.
Versus like, no, I got this barrier, fuck it, right? Like I got this barrier and I'm going to rise up and I'm going to show up powerfully whether he likes it or not. And I'm not going to pander to what has been said to him. I'm not going to assume any of those things. I'm going to show up powerfully. If it's effective, awesome. If it's not effective, it will be someday. And that was some advice that I got from someone too. They're like, the difficulty of this circumstance is how we show up as men, and the efforts that you've done will not be manifested until a long time. And so you may not be you may not see any of the fruits until a long time. In fact, just the other day, I was going through my Instagram and I found an old post that my son tagged me on. And it was him and I in Hawaii. And he said, "Happy Father's Day."
Your son.
My son.
Okay.
He says, "Happy Father's Day to the most, the greatest role model that I have in this life."
Wow.
That's the son that I had zero influence on, quote unquote, that had a mom that was talking bad about, like this kid that I had no influence over. Now, that post was when he's about 18.
Yeah, but all those years before.
We got divorced when he was like 2.
Wow.
So, and trust me, was there moments of darkness between those? Oh man, you have no idea. I remember I went out to Pennsylvania to go visit them because I'd fly out there and visit them as much as I could if she would let me.
Yeah, of course.
Right, and I was free babysitting, so she's always about it, right? So I tried to go out there and visit him, and I remember I went to his house to go pick him, and this is my son Ian. I remember I went to go get him, and we're packing his bags, and his little buddy from the neighborhood, he's like, "Hey, Ian, where are you going?" And he's like, "Oh, well, I'm going to go on a road trip with my dad." And this kid goes, "Your dad? I thought you said your dad's dead." And I was like,
"Oh no!"
My heart just like crushed. And I was like,
"See,
and I'm like,
that
damn,
sucks."
Totally.
That sucks.
My kid's pretending I don't exist, right?
Oh my God.
But now, here's and I didn't do this, by the way. So I want to be really clear because I don't want to like prop myself up as like some genius. But in hindsight, my hurt and suffering had to do with who?
You.
Not my son.
No, you. It had to do with you.
It had to do with me.
Yes.
But imagine if I had a true outward mindset and I was actually empathetic, why would a little boy, tell his friend that his dad's dead? What kind of hurt does he is experiencing? what kind of way do I need to show up to serve him even more so?
Yeah.
But I didn't think about that, right? I was woe is me.
Yeah, I'm still hearing you say that makes me feel woe is me.
I know.
Like I couldn't imagine
but
being
think
in that
about
position.
how he might have felt. What would cause him to want to tell another boy that? Because he feels alone, that he doesn't have a man in his life, and he's embarrassed that he doesn't have a male role model.
No.
And he thinks he's probably less of a kid compared to the other kids because they have dads.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I should have connected
That's
to.
where you should have, yeah.
Because that gives me impact and power in the moment to go, damn that,
No, you're good.
I am going to show up even more powerful so I can serve him versus.
But how do you show up so powerful if he's all the way over there? So you're like, hey, I want to get you on the weekends. I know you already told your friends that I'm dead.
Yeah.
And I'm only going to now be alive for a couple months and then I'm gone again. What do you do then? How do you foster that relationship? How do you build that love and that growth with so much distance? And then now you have this new family as a, almost like these, I'm whispering like they can't hear me.
Yeah.
like the newer, like the bonus kids.
Yeah.
Almost shield me from my own kids.
Yeah.
Like on the days that my kids are here, the other kids turn the fuck up. Daddy, hey daddy, can I have a hug? Can I do this? Because they don't even want me to
they're competing.
They're competing.
Yeah, totally.
And there's so much competition and there's so many intricate factors in this. When your kids ever all came in together, was there ever competition amongst them with you?
Without a doubt.
How did you combat that?
So for me,
how was you like, hey, there's love for everybody? Like
I still actually, there's even an element of that with our biological kids, right? Like there's this ongoing joke in our family, like who's the favorite, and they all kind of joke around about it, but they joke around about it for a reason, right?
Because of course.
And I think the answer for them is the same answer for the other kids. And that's the power of alone time with them, right? Every single one of my kids, whenever I've just done something with just them, it has always been hugely impactful. Period.
One would imagine. That makes total sense.
And so even when my boys were younger, like when they were really young, let's pause for a second. So 100% present when we come visit, right? When we go visit them. And then I tried to, and I in hindsight, I should have tried harder, to be frank. But I would fly out to wherever she was living and say, hey, can I have the boys for the weekend? Yeah, and in most cases, most ex-wives were like, free babysitting for the weekend, like done.
Yeah,
right?
oh yeah.
And so there's numerous times where I'd like fly out, sleep on their floor in their room somewhere, pack them up and then pack them up and go somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And so we were constantly looking for avenues to get out there above and beyond them just coming during the summer.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And then when we are with them, just being fully present as much as we humanly can. But I do think being fully present is really present, right? Like you can't be present if we had 15 men in this room. You're not being present with me.
Yeah, we wouldn't. We'd be
right. You're multitasking your presence, right?
Yeah.
Like a little bit of here, a little bit of there. Well, time in a season, right? And so when the boys have visited and they're a little bit older and they love backpacking, like me and the two oldest boys, we go camping quite a bit all the time when they're younger. And the reason why is because it got them and me away from everything. Like full presence.
Was there
even the TV's gone, right?
But was there ever any jealousy? So you're saying the two oldest as in yours.
Yes.
My
biological, not Kiave's. Yeah.
And so now was Kiave and his mom and Asia ever like, well, how come you only taking your boys? Why don't you want to take my boy?
Well, luckily me,
how come I can't come?
Yeah. Luckily for me, he was at the time he didn't want to. In a couple of those cases, you're like, I don't want to go. So we would go without him. But then I was really careful that when we went to do stuff, it was the boys are doing stuff.
Yeah, even him.
Yeah, there's no I made sure there's no separation. However, would I go on a guys' night with just Ian? Yeah. Would I go on just the guys' night with Brendan? Yeah. And when they're with me. And then when they're gone for the summer, or we're back to winter, it's like, hey, Kiave. But even us going to the Nickelcade, me and Kiave is important too.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
And so I think any one-on-one time where they get their parent all to themselves is just positive, period, regardless of, half biological or non-biological children.
Now, when you have 5 or 6 like us, and you're trying to give all that alone time, and there's jealousy involved, and now I'm like, okay, this kid, his love language is time. I'm gonna spend some time. I'm gonna play some video games with him. But now, while I'm playing my 5 minutes with this kid, this other kid is like, Daddy, can you watch me do cartwheels? Can you watch me do cartwheels? And then I'm like, oh, okay, 1 second. And then I got this kid, but then this kid wants to show me something, but then the wife wants to show me something, and then everyone is pulling me.
Yeah.
So how would I, or do you have any methods, I guess, of removing myself, or do I just have to, without hurting anyone's feelings, or do I just have to take the masculine approach and say, listen, everybody, family, whether you're mine, you're not mine, you're the wife, you're the new wife, I need my time with my kids. Suck it up.
Yeah.
I don't know, what do I do? Which one? Do I try, is there a way I can communicate with them to say, hey, to where it's easy and no one's feelings are hurt? Or do I just have to pull the trigger and just take my 2 kids away? And
you know what? I don't know.
Because anytime I take my kids out, even if it's for any reason.
Yeah, why is it them and not us?
Yeah, you're separating the family.
Yeah. Well, I lean in the direction of, well, let me say it this way. My oldest boys, they have such a strong relationship with my daughters. Mm-hmm. Like there's no difference.
So the daughters are yours and Asia's.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There's no difference there. My daughters, like the boys weren't going to come home for Christmas, for instance, because they're too poor and they didn't save enough money to get a flight home, right? And we didn't want to help them.
Yeah, fair. Hey,
we're like, hey,
because they're older now.
Yeah. Like if you guys are, wasting your money on alcohol or partying, like that's on you, right? Like we're not going to help you. But my two daughters found out that they weren't coming for Christmas, and they have enough savings to actually pay for their flight.
That's the feminine thing to do right there.
Yeah.
Like, oh, let me.
Yeah. But
good for you and
them. They are their brothers.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
there is
100%.
no like.
There's no separation.
This is my stepbrother, right? Like,
but that wasn't like that back in the day, now was it?
No. Well, they know nothing other than that, right?
Okay, yeah.
Does it make sense?
That's their
They've
perspective.
always been brothers.
Perception is reality.
But I actually, in the early days, like I would not intentionally separate my time with just my biological boys and Kiabe. There's no way. If we were going to do a guys thing, it was a guys thing.
All of them.
Now, I would have individual time, right, with each kid, so they get some one-on-one with me.
But
I wouldn't intentionally go, no, it's just the Sorensens going out tonight, right? Like,
yeah.
No. And the reason why is because as much as I think I'm amazing and I want to have a strong relationship with them, what's probably even more amazing is their strong relationship with the family unit.
100%.
And I think that's true, right? We have both of those boys, hers and mine, roommates in Barcelona, going to college together. They're brothers.
Yeah, they're brothers.
They're brothers and pals and friends.
So all the stress that we go through as parents didn't even affect them.
No, but also like me creating a divide between them wouldn't have helped that
at all.
But me bringing them together did.
That's a
right?
valid point.
And my wife's parents, those are their grandkids. My boys are
they're
equal grandkids. Yeah. They would know no different, which I love, right? Because when the boys come home for Christmas, it's they feel loved, and not by just their dad. They feel loved by
the whole
40
family.
people that think they're just the best thing on earth, right? That
so they
get
that whole
contribute to them.
So it sounds like through all this struggle and all this stress and pain and guilt that in the end it worked out.
Hell yeah, dude.
And that's nice.
Yeah.
And now you got yourself like a gang.
Totally.
Like a SWAT team unit.
Totally. Now,
and
is
guys
there
all
repercussions? Divorce is never easy on a kid, right? And there's probably things that my son, subconsciously they're not even aware of things that they need to fix that I've done to them. Right?
Yeah.
But all in all, no. Like I don't think they doubt my love for them, and I don't think. Not only that, they've inherited an entirely family unit that wasn't even on the radar for them to have as a family.
And
they
now
got
they're,
it. Yeah, and what I see in family unit is my wife, because my wife is amazing. So they think there's no doubt.
They call her mom.
Well, no, that's a tricky subject for us. Actually, in Hawaiian culture, it's disrespectful for me to call you, like if I'm a younger kid, I don't call you Tommy.
You say uncle.
I say uncle.
Yeah, I have a lot of Hawaiian.
Everyone's uncles and aunties.
Auntie.
And you certainly wouldn't call your stepmother like by her name either.
Of course not.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course not.
And so now, but auntie's a little weird. You're right. And we were kind of, they were young when we first got married, but my ex-wife was like, I'm going to take you to court kind of stuff if you force them to call them. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
calling them.
yeah.
So there was a little bit of like them calling her mom, and then she found out about it and made him wrong for it, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was like that kind of
That sounds like a
weirdness.
tense situation.
Yeah, it was a little bit.
Because we do the mom and dad thing for both. So everyone's mom, everyone's dad, essentially, in this situation.
And I think it should be that way. Like, and I 100%, my boys know that Asia loves them.
Of course.
Like a mother. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So she's done an amazing job. But but I feel like it's worked out.
Yeah.
Right? It's been
Love
tough.
that.
But
Sounds like it.
Yeah, it's worked out.
So we talked about the dynamic with the his and hers, right?
Yeah.
We talked about that dynamic.
Yeah.
How does ours play into this? How does your and Asia's kids
so much
feel about your kids, and then also about, and we're still talking back then when you guys were still trying to build this beautiful dynamic.
So our three kids together, they see all three boys as brothers. Period.
And it's been that way.
Yeah.
That's
I remember we had conversations like a few years ago of like, where's Kiave going again? He's going to Portugal. Where? To with his dad. What? Dad's not his dad, right? Like
everything is all over. Yeah.
They're like shocked at 5, right? You're like, no, we've told you this, right? But they don't get it.
Yeah.
Because the way they see it is we're a family, right? And so
one unit.
So it's not a weird ours to our split kids, if you want to use that term. There's no weirdness whatsoever. Like they're just good to go. Yeah.
So my kids, they all really like each other. They're all around the same age. They go to the same school. They're all great friends. But it's only on certain times. And now that I'm like talking to you about it, I feel like I'm almost creating most of these issues that I'm having. Like now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like I'm allowing the guilt to take over.
And I think, let's be frank, like if you let the guilt come in too much, it's going to alter how you show up.
Yeah.
And how you show up is going to create the very thing that you're probably not wanting to happen.
Yes, because I'm parenting based off this fear and parenting based off this guilt, as opposed to parenting off like just intention. Like I want to be intentional and I want to put these values into you. But now I'm approaching parenting solely based off this guilt and emotion. So like if a lesson needs to be given, maybe a stern one, I might not give it to the one that needs it. Or I might overly give it.
Because you're trying to compensate to the scenario versus being consistent.
Being consistent and being in that moment.
Totally. What's interesting about that as a segue, and this was kind of like a little bit of a breakthrough for me over the last couple months, because I was doing some training around being trustworthy and creating trust. And it's funny, one of the number one contributing factors to trust is actually consistency. And it's interesting is we always assume consistency is consistently loving and consistently whatever. No, it's just consistent, period.
All around.
So if you're inconsistent with punishment, if you're inconsistent between children, inconsistency is inconsistency.
Throughout, yeah.
And a kid can't trust that.
That's a good point.
I can't trust you, right? If you worked one way with one kid and you worked a different way with another kid, so now you're a wild card.
Yeah, I can't read you.
I don't know what I'm going to get with you. Yeah. And that creates a sense of uncertainty, which is unsafety, right, for a child. Yeah.
Very good point.
So it's almost like I got to be consistent with my punishments. I have to be consistent.
Even no matter how I feel about it, I have to do it.
Right, because that consistency is safety. They know what they're getting.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then with the dynamic with your ex-wife, did she ever bring a new man into the picture? Like, did they have a dad?
Yeah. So she didn't get married until they were older, like high school age,
Okay.
right? So it wasn't like
So
it
there
wasn't
was
like
no
that.
thing.
But she dated earlier on, and
Did
there's
you ever
really
ha-
serious relationships with some guys.
Did you ever have to make yourself known as the kid's dad? I know
what do you
that's
mean?
I know that sounds silly, and I know that sounds like a very old school traditional way of looking at it.
Yeah.
But I feel like my
hey, dipshit, these are my kids.
Yeah, and I don't even mean it in a I don't mean it in an aggressive standpoint.
Okay.
I mean it in the idea of there seems to be a tendency amongst divorcees where there's this weird awkwardness, this lack of communication because of the situation.
Yeah.
But what I propose is if my ex-wife, not my new wife, if my ex-wife gets a new man, if you get a new man, I'll kill you. If my ex-wife gets a new man, my idea is just to go make myself present.
Totally.
Just like, hello, phone call, text, whatever, face to face. So for example, my new wife, her dad, her kids' dad, has never even spoken to me. Whenever we do pick up or drop off, he won't look me in the eye. It's like almost like I disrespected him. I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm like, have you ever had to actually go up and approach a man and like talk to them and be like, hey, just want to listen to make myself known. My name is Kipp. I'm a black belt. Just throwing that out there. I don't know. But that kind of thing. This is how I want to raise my kids. This is the ideas.
Yeah, not intentionally. Like I haven't done that intentionally, but I've met a lot of these guys through if she was in a serious relationship during pickups and stuff. It's like, oh, hey, nice to meet you. But I would go out of my way to make sure nice to meet you. And the reason why is because, to your point, I think this is what you're alluding to is whether he likes it or not, he needs to know you, right?
Yes.
If you guys are serious, I'm part of the package, whether you guys enjoy it or not.
It's me, exactly.
Yeah, those are my kids, and how I raise my kids affects how they show up at your house, and how you raise my kids affects me. Welcome to the family.
Exactly.
Right? I think that's really important.
And that's, and I feel, I don't know, because this new situation is so awkward. I drop them off and for example, the kids will be FaceTiming their dad and I'll just kind of walk by and try to be nice and try to be, I'm a nice, whatever, and he'll just turn the camera.
You need to just buy him a copy of No More Mr. Nice Guy, and you're like, hey, I'll buy you a book,
right,
buddy.
dude. I have it in the barbershop, man. No Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah, he has Mr. Nice Guy written all over him.
Or the opposite. Or he thinks he's being masculine by being
being tough, right?
Yeah, I'm like, pussy.
Well, that's why the Mr. Nice, the typical nice guy is actually an asshole. Right?
Big time. The typical nice guy is just
passive aggressive.
Passive aggressive, blanketed asshole.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
So you had that. What about did Asia ever have any exes? I mean, she did, obviously, Honduras man.
Yeah.
But have you ever had to have any run-ins or interactions with him, or has he always been in Honduras?
No. So Portugal. So he's Portuguese. Yeah. No, he's awesome.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's really
He never
great.
had no problems with you. He never had no issues. It's not awkward.
If anything, the approach that we always took with him was, he needs to be in Chiave's life as much as possible.
Facts.
How do we make that possible?
Yeah.
Right. And to the extent of hey, don't pay child support. If you don't have enough money, you're barely scraping, don't pay child support. Save that money and use that to fly Chiave out during the summer, right? And that's what we'll do because he should be around you. And so we encourage his time with his dad as much as humanly possible, for sure.
100%.
I mean, there's even scenarios where his dad and his mother-in-law would fly in and then stay at our house.
Wow.
And then they would go out and then they would grab Chiave and do a road trip, right? Or they flew in and then when we were in New York and they stayed in our house while we were in New York the whole time.
Wow.
Right.
So you guys have that not open relationship, but
not that kind of relationship.
Yeah, but openness of communication.
Totally.
That's where I'm trying to get to.
He's a super cool guy, right? Super cool guy. I actually respect him huge. And I should. That's also Chiave's dad.
Yeah, fair
enough.
What I'm
saying?
And respect for Chiave, you should respect the father.
Yeah,
I try as much as I can to not say anything negative or anything like that around the.
Totally.
You
Yeah,
know.
and I can honestly literally say that. I've said zero. I know without a doubt I've never said anything ill ever about his dad. Never.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So now with the concept of treating the whole family like it's one unit.
Yeah.
And we're punishing accordingly and we're raising them accordingly. Have you ever had any issues or came across any issues disciplining Kiave?
So here's our struggle.
And I hope you understand what I'm asking.
Yeah, I think
has she ever given you any issues, like, or why did you discipline him like that, or
totally.
not enough discipline because you were worried, hey, he's not my kid.
Yeah,
Where
totally.
is that?
Here was our issue, and I think this is an important distinction.
Okay.
First off, we got to get clear that the role of a mom and a role of a father are different, and they're great, and it's beautiful, and they're not the same.
100%.
So a mom is always going to be more empathetic, more caring, and that's great. And dad's going to be harder and more stern, and they're going to push their kids in a way that mom never will. And they don't need to align and do the same parenting. In fact, I would recommend that it shouldn't be that way.
You should completely embrace
realize
the opposites.
Yeah, exactly. Her role in the relationship is a unique way, and my role, and she needs to be okay with me being a father, and I need to be okay with her being a mother. And I think in the early stages,
any of the children,
it doesn't matter.
Hers, yours, ours, theirs.
Agnostic of whose biological kids.
Yeah,
is,
that
right?
part doesn't matter.
Now, with that said, that was the first thing that we had misalignment around. We're like, oh, we need to parent the same, right? And that was the first thing that we have to fix, right? We was like, no, actually, this is okay. I'm going to bring a level of masculinity to this. You're going to bring a level of feminine to how you parent, and it's beautiful. And it's exactly what our kids need, and that's the healthy thing they need. So that's the first distinction that we had to get aligned
And
on.
having that conversation.
For sure. Once that was clear, then you can have the conversation about the other. Because what we ran into early on was, well, you're babying Kiave, and your mother bearing him way too much. And so what do? I overreact and I overboard.
You overpower.
Right? I'm overly aggressive. I'm riding his ass all the time. Right?
Yes.
And then she sees that, and then she like protects him, undermines my authority.
God.
Right? And then it's tit for tat.
Yes.
And we start creating a toxic relationship with our son, but also with each other.
100%.
Right? And then it disrupts our relationship.
It starts with y'all.
Totally. So the difference of mom and dad, I think, is critical. Now, with that said, have we had those conversations, or like, why are you always such an asshole to Kiave? Without a doubt.
How does one of those conversations play out, and how would you have that conversation differently now?
Totally. Like in the early days, I felt like we thought the parenting was different because he wasn't my biological kid. When in reality, I'd probably say 70% of it was because I'm a man and she's a woman. So it had nothing to do with biological. And then there was a little bit of like, well, yeah, but you're not that hard on Ian. And I'm like, yeah, but Ian's not my full-time son.
Yeah.
Ian's here for 2 weeks.
And he's on vacation.
I'm not going to ground the little guy for the last week that he's here, right? I got to play this angle differently, right? Like, I got to approach this a little bit differently because he's not my son full-time.
But what happens
and I
when
have
the wife
expectations
doesn't
on
understand
Kiave.
that?
Well, I mean, that's us fleshing it out, right? Like, working through it. Like, I'm not intentionally, like, looking at him and thinking less of him, but I do have higher expectations of him.
Yeah.
And he's not even my son, but I have higher expectations because he's in our home.
Your stamp is on him.
He's in our home.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the key thing that helped us was a couple things. One, that you have to be unified in info. You have to present a unified front.
Go deeper. What do you mean by that specifically? Because you said present like emphasis.
Present. We may disagree. You're never going to always agree with your spouse, period.
Yeah.
Period.
Fair.
Regardless of biological kids,
yeah.
Right? But when it comes to what you do with your kids, you need to be unified. So if it's a conversation behind the door is, I think you're crazy. I think you're overly aggressive. I think you're this, whatever. Okay, well, what are we going to decide? All right, I'm compromising a little bit. All right, here's our unified front. We're going to go out through this door. We're going to talk to him.
I see what you mean. So present it literally.
We are deciding that we are doing X. Not you, not me. We are. And so he knows that this is how we're approaching this from a unified front, that him and I, or him and her, me and his mom, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
We're on a team.
In his eyes. Even though y'all just bickered in the room, but in his eyes, there's no mommy said this, but daddy said that.
No, because what does that do to a teenager?
It creates
he's going to divide the shit out of you guys, right?
Yeah.
He's going to say, oh, well, I'm circumventing dad. I'm going to only ask mom for shit.
Mom,
because
and she says, no, I'm going to play some waterworks.
Nah, man. Like, unified front, right? So the kids know that, like, hey, this is a pair. And then you might go like, well, this is bullshit. I don't want to compromise or whatever, right? This is when it starts coming down to what's best for your kid.
Yeah.
And what's best for your kid is a unified front. So we need to start swallowing our ego a little bit and going, no, all right. I'm compromising here for the sake of us being unified. Why? Because we want to show our kid that this is what a marriage looks like.
Yeah.
This is what a partnership looks like. You compromise, you figure it out, and you work together. And you both honor each other. If we both parent differently and we're undermining each other's parenting, we are creating a horrible example of what a successful marriage looks like. And major inconsistency.
Back to that inconsistency.
Major
part.
Inconsistency, right? So a couple things. So there's that. The other thing is that was a major breakthrough for us is to get really present on the power of empathy and how we see our children. Mm-hmm. So if you don't mind me like kind of suggesting a little bit.
No, please.
I approach my relationship with Kiave from the perspective of for him and I to have a better relationship, he needed to change and show up differently, and then I could have a relationship. Does it make sense?
That makes sense.
Like our relationship's broken because you're being a dipshit and you're constantly doing stupid stuff.
Yeah,
right?
so the only way to make this relationship work is
align,
if you...
Yeah, align, and then, dude, we can be better.
Yeah.
Well, translation from a kid's perspective, hey, I don't love you until you become who I think you should become. And so let me try to control who you are, and then maybe I'll show affection and love.
Yeah. That's the horrible message, but that is what they're taking in.
Yeah, totally. And so we need to approach that empathetic focus, right, towards our relationship with our children. And this is a little woo-woo, this language, but I like it. It resonates for me. But we need to see them as whole and complete, period. Kiave is whole and complete. Now, does he make bad decisions? Sure. But is he amazing? You know, and I don't know if you're a religious guy, but like one way to maybe look at what is whole and complete, maybe that's how God sees me.
Yeah.
Sees me for who I'm capable of becoming, my potential.
Yeah.
Not necessarily based upon my actions per se. Does it make sense?
Yeah, but I just want to pick at that.
Yeah.
But if you as the father are trying to adjust their actions based off who they can become. So isn't that what you're doing? So isn't that what you're doing when you're saying, I'm trying to change you and make you change and blah 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 blah.
But the problem is when I focus on change first, I approach a relationship from the perspective that he's broken.
I see. So
and
you're saying,
I have a heart at war with him.
That makes total sense.
So I need to have a heart at peace with him and like see him as the amazing human that he is, almost his divine nature.
Yeah.
And then engulf in like learning and listening to him. And then, and only then, am I really in a position of influence.
Wow.
Otherwise, if I try to influence before having that strong of a relationship, then I'm just micromanaging.
Yeah,
and you can take this same exact concept, throw this into the work environment. I'll give you a perfect example. We had these in the Iron Council, right? We have all these guys are on battle teams, and we have these battle team mentors. Mm-hmm. And I had a battle team mentor call me up, and he's like, hey, this battle team leader's not doing what he should be doing or whatever, and he's not listening to me, right? Mm-hmm. And I asked this mentor, I'm like, how's your guys' relationship? And he's like, good. I'm like, how's your influence with him? He's like, good. I coach him up all the time and around like areas that he can improve on or whatever. And I go, how's his wife? Mm-hmm. How's his kids?
Yeah.
How's work going? Well, I don't know. then you have zero
You don't
influence
know
in
jack.
his life.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on, right? What's the Carnegie? People don't care what you say until they know how much you care.
Yes.
That's exactly what's happening, right? If someone comes to you and you know it's not genuine and we don't have an established relationship and you're coaching me, dude, shut up, right? You're just trying
Who are you?
Yeah, who are you? Like, you don't give a shit. You're just trying to make yourself look good, or there's alternative motives. The intent's not pure. It's about changing me. You don't see me, blah, 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 right? And so we need to be in a position of influence. And I approached that wrong. And I think Ace just saw that, right? Where I was like, correct, right?
That's
like,
where I'm at.
you got to change. And I didn't have the knowledge at the time to be able to go like, oh, what does that feel like from his perspective? It feels like I don't see him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
I don't actually genuinely love him. And the fact
You're
that
only
he's
seeing
not
your
my
idea of him.
Yeah, and the fact that he's not my biological son, you don't think that already intensifies that feeling? Of course it does.
100%.
Right? So we're already our backs up against the wall. And then I show up in a way that I'm micromanaging him and trying to change him and not seeing him as a person. Man, of course he's going to react way worse, right? In that circumstance. And so it wasn't until I realized what I was doing that I was like, okay, yeah, actually my aggression around what he needs to do, I can't do that, man. I got to establish a relationship
First.
When's the last time we've been hanging out? When's the last time I took him out to the, and I keep mentioning Nickel Cave because that's what we do that all the time.
Yeah.
But like, when's the last time we went to the Nickel Cave? When's the last time we just went and grabbed a burger?
Yeah.
Right?
Valid point.
And not only that, if mom and I are bickering, who does he probably love more than me? His mom. And if mom has a problem and he knows we're fighting, you think that doesn't affect his relationship with me?
100%.
And mom and I's got to be on the same page too, because that will affect my ability to have a strong relationship with him.
Dude, you just blew me back. Really, that's true. Man. So now, okay, when we talk about intention and we talk about being there for all of the kids equally, also you're a man who's a full employee, full worker.
I got a normal job.
You have a normal job. You're a black belt in jiu-jitsu, so that takes time, dedication. Yeah. You do Order of Man as well, time and dedication. You do Iron Council, time and dedication. You got wife and you got 6 kids.
Yeah.
Balance.
I'm doing them all really shitty.
No. I'm being honest because
how do I balance it?
Yeah, where is this balance? Because on my end, I got the barbershop. I have another franchise thing that I'm doing. Yeah. The 6 kids. I'm also in barber school, as you probably know. And I'm doing all the things, and the saddest thing is everything is on the up and up. The podcast is coming up. Everything's coming up. Yeah. But now my family's right here. Yeah. And then as soon as I give energy to the family, podcast and life drops. Totally. And then at the same time, the family starts dropping because now the finances are gone, now the hustle's gone, the wife doesn't see a man that's hustling and working anymore. She just sees him at home all day. Where's the balance?
Yeah, I'm going to steal something from Ryan because he talks about this all the time. And we even talk about this at my job. One of our core values right now is we say it's work-life balance. And everyone assumes what that is like we're going to draw a pie of time, and then we're going to take the pie and we're going to say, okay, work's this percentage and family's this percentage.
I just need you to know, please let me interrupt, I'm sorry. That I don't know where you're going to go with that.
Okay.
But that is exactly how I describe my life. And if someone says, why aren't you, because I had to stop jiu-jitsu for a little bit. Yeah. And they're like, why don't you go back to jiu-jitsu? Why don't you go back to Muay Thai? And I'm like, well, because my life is a pie chart. And if I take away from this category to add another category, where are you going? I just want to let you know that's exactly how I explain it.
I like to use the term, it's not called work-life balance. It's called work-life flexibility and integration.
Distinction, I like it.
Because it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
Trying to find balance is very imbalanced.
Balance goes to shit the minute that we have a large client migration cutover over the weekend.
Yeah.
And I got to double down in there. And then I got to course correct. And then I got to run over here. And I got to run over there. And I got to constantly, you know those balance boards? Have you seen those balance boards?
Oh, yeah.
It's a balance board. You're constantly instantaneous course corrections constantly, right, to maintain some form of balance. I think that's healthy.
I've heard Ryan's explanation about snowboarding. Kind of like you have to go with.
He must not be a very good snowboarder.
Right?
I'm just joking. No, but exactly. But the balance where I have one of those balance boards on my stand-up desk, and it's just constant course correction. Right?
Yeah.
But work-life balance is for us, for where I work and for our employees is like, it's 3 p.m. My kid has a baseball game. I'm leaving. It's the flexibility
to be able to do
to
that.
have the things support each other. And that's what we want, right? We want them to support each other. Now, the only way we can support each other is to be honest. And for me, there's a price for all things, period. And I have to remind myself of this often, there is a price. So if Ryan goes, hey, Kipp, I want you to do an extra episode during the week, or I want to do this in the order of man, I actually have to, before I say yes to that, I have to go, what is the price?
Yeah, what is it going to cost? That's a
very
good point.
And am I willing to pay the price? Like, it's funny, we operate in ignorance all the time. I did this seminar earlier this year, and I asked guys, I was like, raise your hands, everyone who wants to be a millionaire. Of course,
everybody raise their hands.
Yeah. And we have emotion to it, right? Like everyone listening right now, do you want to be a millionaire? Do you want to have that level of financial stability in your life? All of us would go like,
of course.
I know what that looks like, and I know how it'd feel, and there's emotional connection to it, right? And then if we took a whiteboard and started listing down all the things you would have to do
to get to that,
most hands would go down.
Yeah.
Because the reality of it is that most of us are not willing to pay the price to be a millionaire. So why say you want to be one? Why hold on to the emotional idea that you want something that you're unwilling to pay the price for?
Yeah.
If you're not willing to pay the price for it, then let it go. And then go do something that you are willing to pay the price for.
Valid. Yeah.
And so for me, I have to remind myself constantly, like, what's the price for this? And am I willing to pay that price? And if I'm not, then I'm not going to do it.
So it's almost on like a task-to-task basis.
Not so much task to task, but like what I got going on.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I mean. I can take on this task.
I got this franchise here. I got the barbershop. I got this. Yeah. I got jiu-jitsu. Okay, I want to do jiu-jitsu. What am I willing to pay? And the answer might be like, nothing right now. Actually, I'm not willing to pay that price right now.
Yeah, that's kind of
where
where
I'm not going to do it. But it's so empowering to know that. Otherwise, what will happen is we'll walk around going, oh man, I want to do, and something's wrong. No, be intentional. No, I'm not doing jiu-jitsu right now in my career. Why? Because I'm not willing to sacrifice the other things that I have going on for that a priority.
Yeah, the price is
not. Maybe down the road. Maybe down the road I'll do that.
Very good point.
That's a powerful place to be, right? When you approach it that way.
And not just that, well, you can actually, it sounds like from that concept, you can actually start putting an almost like a value on things. So it's like not on things, but like on your time.
Totally.
So it's like time with my kids is like a 10.
Yeah.
But time with my friends is like a 2. So if my friend asks, that 2 is bigger than my 10. I mean, that 2 is smaller than my 10, so I'm going to get with my 10.
Totally.
That makes sense.
Totally. And we have to be mindful, and there's some integration, right, that can happen. Like I used this analogy the other day. It's like Asia and I, there's this race from Logan, Utah to Jackson, Wyoming. It's called Loto Jaw, and it's like 210 miles on a road bike.
Oh.
It was miserable.
Oh, it sounds miserable.
The training for that took a lot of time, right?
Uh-huh.
Like almost every day during the week, I'd come home from work, we'd throw on our bike clothes, and then we'd go throw in 30 miles, right?
Yeah.
And it was just constant, like, kids, we'll be back and have dinner at 8:30, right? Like it was just, we integrated it. There's a price.
Big price.
We're not spending time with our kids. However, come race day, who's in the car with us? Our kids. Who's cheering mom on? Our kids. Who's seeing their mom do something crazy?
Yeah.
Something unreasonable that like most people will
Wouldn't
never do? Them.
So they value from that as well.
Oh, totally. You don't think it's my daughter Kika, she's 11, and literally on the way here in the car, she's doing like a video vlog.
Yeah.
She's like, okay, we're on the road. That happens because she did some YouTube search of my name, And she like thinks I'm famous, right?
Yeah,
so she's
yeah.
like, well, maybe I want to be a podcaster,
Oh, yeah.
It's funny, right? But my point being is like, those things matter.
Yeah, it matters even to them.
Like it matters that you're successful here, that the barbershop is powerful, right? That the podcast is successful. We just have to be careful, right?
Yeah.
That we don't let these things affect the higher priorities in a way that like undermines them. But I also, what I'm trying to say is, the top priority is what? Our family.
Family.
Without a doubt.
Even the things we do outside of the house
Yeah.
is still for the house.
Totally.
Essentially.
But I can't just say, hey, you know what, honey, I'm quitting my job because family's important. I'm just going to be present with you guys, and that's my number one priority.
Yeah.
No, because we need to show them, what does it look like to grind through? What does it look like to be successful? What does it look like to have strong friends? Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's important to me too. Like my buddies are really important to me, especially when you start thinking about the kind of men that you have in your life. Mm-hmm. And how they contribute to your kids.
Of course. Yeah, you want them.
You want friends in your life.
Yeah.
You want friends, the right people in your life.
The right ones.
Right, for your kids.
That's a good point. I have a really good buddy of mine, like a lifelong friend of mine. He's into firearms. And we were all at his house the other day, a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And he was teaching my son firearms. Now, if you know me, firearms is my thing.
Yeah, I've actually, I've noticed.
Yeah, guns and knives and the tactical thing, that's my thing.
Yeah.
My buddy knew that. He was like, oh, buddy, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to be teaching your kid. I was like, no. This is good. Yeah. This is good. I want him to learn from another masculine figure. This is good. But the pride, if I would have been prideful about it, I would have been like, hey, what do you do? I'm not ready for that.
Yeah.
But the idea is that to build that masculine network that even your son can feed off of. I'm so glad you said that.
And empowering your buddies to step in.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like I have, Kiabe, when he was a teenager, he was tough for us. There's a lot of opportunity of learning, right, with him. And my buddy Matt Campbell from New York, a good friend of ours, they would come into Utah and go skiing, every winter, and they'd just crash at our house. And Matt, I swear, whenever he was at the house, it was like intentionality. Hey, Kiabe, let's talk for a little bit.
Yeah.
Kiabe, let's go for a walk. Right? Like, he was constantly looking for an opportunity to influence him.
And that wouldn't have happened if you didn't garner your friendship with your homies,
but
too.
I was like, dude, Matt, I love it.
Yeah.
And so much that even Matt's son, he was going to university and was on his way back home. and he calls me up and says, hey, I'm hopping on a flight tomorrow. I really want to come by and say hi to you guys in the family. This is a teenager.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's crazy.
Kind of going out of his way because he knows that relationship's important and I better do that. Right?
Yeah.
Just like with Ryan, right? When I'm out in Maine, his boy Brecken, I'm constantly like, dude, you've been training. What are you doing? You
get that intentional time.
And I'm, I'll call him out if I hear or I see something on social media that I don't think he's doing. I'll reach out to him dude, what are you doing?
You gotta love that, though. Yeah, you gotta love that.
Yeah.
That's that. Oh man, that's that intentionality. What is it like having a buddy like Ryan?
It's really interesting, actually. So I don't know. I find relationships. Every relationship is really unique.
Unique, 100%.
Don't you think?
100%.
None of your buddies are exactly the same.
No, that's why I asked.
Yeah.
I was very cautious when I said, what's it like having a friend like Ryan Mickler?
Yeah, Ryan is, it's funny, him and I have such a different approach on things. I think that's why,
that's what works.
What
You're
works
asking me
well
anything,
for us.
He'll say something, and then you'll say something, and then I'm like, wow, there's so much value in both. Let me find the middle.
Yeah, and I'd latch on to a lot of stuff that he does, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to think of this analogy that I would never work this way. I'll give you I wish I had a good example. But his approach is default behavior, act, and just see if there's collateral damage, and if the bridge is there later.
After action review. He covers it up with an after action review.
His thought constantly is just well, just go. You know what I mean? And my thought's no, we got to psychoanalyze this thing, right? We got to lay this out. Is this a good idea? And there's pros and cons to both. One, I have really clear game plan and strategy and expectation. But the negative is I'm slower to take action. Sometimes I'll over procrastinate, or I'm concerned about excellence. Him, on the other hand, is like, he's just destroying things. You know what I mean?
Just do it and see what the fuck happens.
Going. Yeah. So it's I love the difference of our mentality, and I like the idea that we don't have to see things the same for me to learn.
Yeah,
right?
oh yeah.
Because from his perspective too, his confidence about himself is at a level where he would convince you, like, hey, this is why I'm the person for the job. And I'd be like, dude, well, but what if you fail? And he's like, it doesn't matter. They hired me.
Yeah.
And I'd be like,
that's crazy. Yeah,
like,
because you'll be thinking about, but what about all the intricacies and blah, blah, blah. And he's like,
yeah,
I got the job.
He's like, I got the job. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so I see a lot in him that I'm like, man, I need to do a better job. The funny part though is
iron sharpens iron.
Totally. And because we've done so many podcasts, you know, this is the other funny part. And I don't think he said this to me, but I'm sure it's the same. I've heard all the stories, right?
Yeah.
And so we had like a main event. We do 2 main events every year, and like he starts talking about a particular subject, and I can tell you, like I'd be like, oh, here comes the story about whatever.
You'll know when it's coming.
Yeah, it's the B. You know, it's like the B book. You know, the B book's coming up, right? And anyone, I don't know if you guys follow, but like he uses that analogy as everyone's self-improvement is different.
Yep.
Right? And for him, his wife wanted to do beekeeping, and so he went out and
bought her
the book.
And he
you
just
know
gave it
times I've heard that story.
Said that I've heard that's B book. That's what you meant by B book.
Yeah, I've heard that story so many
he's
times.
Like, I just went on Amazon and bought her a book and had it sent over to her, and you know.
But we constantly talking around certain subjects constantly over, you know. So it's really funny to like, even during the podcast when I read a question, I'm like, you know, I'm kind of like,
you know where it's gonna go.
Yeah, I think I know what he's gonna say on this.
Where did you guys even?
How did that even work?
Like, where did y'all even meet? Like, how did you get onto his podcast?
So,
like, when was he like, hey, I would like for you to...
It's really funny. So a friend of mine in high school, you know how it is on Facebook, like every so often you get an invite, like this group or like this page or whatever. My friend Matt Jenkins sent me an invite to the Order of Man Facebook group.
Okay.
And I thought it was Matt's thing.
Yeah.
And Matt's a good friend of mine. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll join some stupid group thing.
Yeah.
Right? And so I joined the group, and then like I'm constantly getting all these stupid notifications from all these conversations, right? Like to the point that I'm like, I need to turn this off, right? This is annoying. So I actually went to the Order of Man Facebook group to unsubscribe because I was annoyed by all the messages.
Whoa.
And so I went there to go unsubscribe, and there was a video of Ryan talking about like, you know, and I'm like, what's this video? So I hit play.
How many years are we talking? How long ago was this talk? Just so I know.
Oh, geez. This is probably like, is it 6 years?
Because his podcast has been going on for some time.
Yeah. Like the podcast and stuff has probably been going on almost a year before this.
Okay, that's what I was trying to
So he's probably about a year in.
He's still newer.
Yeah, he's about a year in. And I saw the video, and I'm like, oh, it's a podcast. And then I'm like, oh, and it's not even Matt's thing. It's this dude,
it's
right?
This guy.
This big beard, right?
So yeah, he had the big one at the time, yeah.
And so I was like, okay. So then I was like, well, I wonder what this podcast is about. Like what he said kind of like, okay. Like
resonated
a little bit. And so I thought, well, I'll just download the podcast before I leave this group and at least listen to it.
Yeah.
And so I listened to a couple episodes, and I was like, oh, this is good stuff. And so then I subscribed and started listening to podcasts. And then I remember, probably like a month or two in, I was like, oh, they have this membership group.
Iron Council?
Yeah,
was it
Iron
that
Council.
Called that at the time still?
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I'll join. So I joined. I got thrown on a team, and I was probably on that team and at this time I was because we used to keep a spreadsheet. Mm-hmm. So I think I was number 68. So I was the 68th member of the Iron Council. And I joined the IC, and I was in for about just a couple months. And Drew was my battle team leader. And I said, I'm like, Drew, I want to serve. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I'm in.
Yeah.
Like, so if there's any way by which I can help contribute, I want to contribute. And so then Ryan called me and said, hey, would you be one of the battle team leaders?
Okay. Oh,
so I'm like, sure. Yeah. We had this guy step down. I'll step into battle team leadership. So then I ran a team. The team was Echo. and I ran that team. And dude, I learned so much, man. I've learned so much over the years. But my default behavior is to be competitive, right? So
okay, black belt in jiu-jitsu, I would imagine.
yeah. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna be the battle team leader of Echo, which will be the best battle team within the Iron Council, and we are going to show up in a way that no other team has ever shown up, right? Like, like that was my objective, right? Yeah. Is like we're going to show this how this should be done, right? And so I owned it, and it was that way. Like I love the old guys in Echo, and we did an amazing job. And there was even some joking with Ryan at time. Like I remember one time Ryan goes, "The only threat to the Iron Council is Kipp and Battle Team Echo," right? And that
was towards the beginning.
Yeah, and that's ironic because one of the lessons I learned as a team lead, one of the dichotomies of leadership actually, is that I can't put my team before the mission.
Shout out to Jocko.
Yeah, and I did that. Echo was everything, right?
Yeah.
So much everything that the guys on Echo, they weren't worried about the Iron Council. They weren't worried about Order of Man. They were worried about us.
Wow, it became your unit.
Totally. But the drawback was what? A team member leave, you would think we all got a divorce.
Yeah.
Whoa, you're letting the team's falling apart, right? Like it was like this big deal. They were super close.
How many people was your approximately?
15, 17 guys.
Okay.
Super tight-knit group, like insanely close. Like if one of those guys called, I'm not joking, one of those guys called me and said, "Kipp, I need you here," I'd be there.
No matter what.
Like that's how close we got, right? It was super, super powerful. But the drawback is I hindered their growth.
Interesting.
Who wants to run another team and leave Echo? Are you joking? These are my brothers. And so they wouldn't go beyond Echo. They wouldn't move beyond the team and like become other battle team leaders in the Iron Council. And if they did, guys were like emotionally distraught about it. Like it was really interesting.
Wow. But that goes to show the type of teammate. I mean,
yeah, but I put my team before the mission.
Yeah, I could see that.
And it hindered me, it hindered them. It was really interesting. And I swear is completely unintentional. Like I didn't even intend it to do that.
I would imagine.
I just thought, let's create the most amazing team. And in doing so, I lost sight of the bigger strategic focus of what is Order of Man, what is Iron Council.
Yeah, because now it's Order of Man and Iron Council, and now this little team just kind of boop.
Yep, doing their own little thing. And here's a powerful thing I think that's I think resonates to what you're doing too. I had a guy, Dom, he was in the Iron Council, solid guy, left the IC. And I'm like, "Oh, dude, everything okay? Like, why are you leaving?" He's like, "Actually, I got this opportunity to run a men's group in my church. And I'm taking what I know and what I've learned here, and I'm going to do this. So my apologies, man. I feel like I'm betraying you guys."
Yeah, because he was bouncing.
I'm like,
whatever.
Dude, and the mission of the Order Man is what? No, dude. This is
what you're doing.
This is what we do.
Yeah.
Right? That's the mission.
Yeah.
So whether it's your podcast, whether it's what Dom's doing, whether it's the Order of Man, like the intent is pure.
Yeah.
Right? And the intent is restoring masculinity, right? And being a resource for men to rise up. I don't care if it's your podcast, if it's Order of Man or someone else. Right?
Yeah,
it's
very
about
good.
banding
that's
together,
the
right?
bigger picture.
And that's the bigger picture, right? And I lost sight of that. Dude, segues all over the place.
It's okay.
So I was a battle team leader for a short period of time.
Yeah.
And I think Ryan was more or less like, "Dude, you're doing a really good job on Echo. I want you to help me with other teams." And then he just called me up one day and said, "Hey, I want to try this. Ask me anything."
Do you only do it on?
Just ask me anything is all I do.
I felt like I've heard you on a couple other things before. You know what? No, those were live main events where you still did ask me anything.
Yeah,
but it was live.
And I've had to go solo a couple times or whatever.
And
so
you've gone solo with other guys.
Yeah,
from your
with Sean.
Yes.
Yeah, and Drew once or twice. Maybe.
And every time you get on, your perspective is very valuable. I want you to know that.
I appreciate
your perspective is very valuable. The contrast between you and Ryan is, I think, what makes that so special, because now he's not just getting his own opinion. And there's nothing wrong with his opinion. I've been going down that path for a long time.
We all think different too.
Exactly.
Right?
And not just that, even if I think like Ryan, even if I'm 100% thinking like Ryan, there might be a situation where I need to be a little bit more Kipp-like.
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
Yeah.
I could be more Kipp-like, where I'm analytical. I'm putting everything into place before I attack. Make sure everything's in line. But there's some times where I might need to be more Ryan-like.
Yeah, and just execute.
Just fucking go for it and see what the fuck happens. Who knows what'll happen? So that
Totally.
value is wonderful, and I hope that you can spread the message to him. Send the message to him.
I will.
That he's been a very big help in my life, and truthfully. Because I know he gets that a lot.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy, you changed my life. But I truthfully mean it. I mean, I literally built my brand based on, look, prepare, lead, protect. Come on now.
Yeah.
Provide. Come on now.
Yeah.
It's like, literally, what you guys have done is way more necessary than you guys might think.
Yeah.
Just from what you guys do.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for that.
I appreciate it.
And I want to thank him for that, because you guys have gotten me through very tough times. It's like whenever I hear some talks, I'm like, these guys are talking directly at what the hell I'm going through and what the fuck I'm feeling.
No, man, I appreciate it, and you're right. Like, I'll be on. You be frank, like, and I'm sure you even do this too, and maybe a lot of us do. Is like, we keep a good circle of people and influence in our lives, and sometimes it feels like, oh, we're talking on Monday and we're talking the questions, and I just feel like. You know what I mean?
You're going
like,
with,
is this really needed? You know what I mean? And then every so often you get a message and you're like,
did you not just say this 2 days ago?
Holy shit.
Your last
I may have.
Your last one, you just said that, and you were like, that you guys are the recipient. Was it that, or was it? I think it was actually a different podcast. I don't even think Ryan was in it. It was you and some dude with a beard. I forgot what his name was. Not on Order of Man at all.
Oh, okay.
You were featured on his podcast.
Got it.
Dude with a beard, something dad. Anyways, you had just said that, and you were like, that we are the biggest recipients.
Totally.
Of that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's just like, even this, right? Like, half the shit that we're saying, I'm saying back to myself anyway, right? Like, am I going to walk out of this room going, you know what? I need to make sure I have an outward focus towards my kid, and then I make sure. Like, of course I am.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I need to practice what I preach, and you know what? Maybe I need to evaluate that a little bit better and do a little bit better job. You know? And that's just the power of the conversation.
100%.
You know?
And I just want to close out with one more question.
Yeah.
Any speaking tips that you may give? I really value the way you speak.
Really?
I really do. Your speaking is very great from as long as I've been listening.
Yeah.
Your speaking is good. You're very eloquent. You use words properly. You talk at a good pace. You talk at a good volume. You don't stutter too much. And since I'm in the early stages of this podcast, I'm trying to get as many tips as I can. So do you have any tips on public speaking, podcasting, anything that you can give me?
Yeah. You know what? So my thing, my superpower, and I've been learning this of late, right? Mm-hmm. Of what is my leadership brand or my style.
Yeah.
And one of them is my energy. For whatever reason, especially if you get me in a room with a group of people, like, I don't know, some switch gets hit and I'm just like, I get passionate so much that I've even had people are like, "Are you angry?"
I can't tell.
I'm like, "No, I'm just, I feel like this is important, right?"
Yeah.
And so it resonates because it really shows, right, when something is important to me. With that said, though, I think for me is looking past my ego and what I'm concerned about. And the more I focus on the intent of the conversation and the importance of it, I just show up differently.
That's what's all about.
Because this is not about me.
Yeah.
It's really not. And it shouldn't be. I try not to anyway. We talked about this earlier. You got to keep that in check,
Yeah.
And so entering the conversation, like even literally yesterday, I did some leadership training to our executive team. And it sounds a little corny, but like even before that, I was like, presence. Why am I doing this? Am I doing this so I can look good? Or I'm doing this because I want to make an impact and serve the individuals that I'm about to talk to. And so I just get present to that first. That way I'm approaching it from the right perspective. I know that's not exactly what you're asking for, but
you know what?
But that helps me.
You actually answered it even better than I anticipated. Because that's a very outside the box way to look at it. If you're being intentional with the conversation, as a whole, and you know what you're there for and that purpose, all the extra words kind of stop mattering at that point.
Totally. Now, with that said, the key thing I have certain terms that are things, and I'll share this with you. I'll send you a message. I don't know the resource right now, but I listen to every single episode that I've ever done. Mm-hmm. And so I listen back through, and in the past, I've listened back to those and then documented key things that I'm working on and how often that happens. And then I'll even watch a recording on YouTube without sound just to see how I show up from a body perspective. And if I'm boring or if I'm using my hands too much in a particular way or whatever. And so really I'll watch that just to analyze that a little bit as well. The number one thing, like I'll give you a perfect example, full authenticity here. Mm-hmm. I say right all the time. And I probably shouldn't tell you because the next time you listen, you'll be like, oh my gosh, it's so annoying.
I say fair enough. I say fair, that's fair. Fair enough, fair, that's fair.
Yeah, I'm always like, right? Because it's out of a habit of being a consultant because I'm always looking for verbal cues.
That
so I'll present, and if you're not nodding your head, I'm like, right? Like, give me something, right?
Yeah, I need
so
feedback.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Such a bad habit. If I start a podcast just remembering not to say right and just having it there with me, that helps me.
Being intentional about it.
Yeah, that helps me not say it as much.
And having that after action review of going over and looking at your
listening
podcast
over and over again. Yeah.
That's a good stuff.
But I don't. I full humility here. I actually don't put myself in the category of a good speaker at all, to be honest with you. I feel it's something I need to work on.
I wouldn't imagine that you would consider yourself that either. If you did, you'd be a prideful asshole. If you were like, I'm a great speaker. But all I hope is that you would just take my compliment.
Yeah.
From a up and coming.
I don't mean to downplay.
No, of course. But from an up and coming podcaster, truthfully, I listen, and I've been listening for a while, and I'm like, the way he speaks, because it's easy for me, because I did an episode a couple days ago. And I know this sounds weird, and only another podcaster would understand this, I guess, but every question I asked, he just answered it. Does that make sense?
I don't understand.
Like, I'll ask him a question,
okay,
and he just answered the question. Like, there was no... There's no depth. How you said, we keep going on tangents. I think that's so beautiful.
I see.
Because it's not like...
I did step 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Next question.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I don't want you to just answer my question because now I have to think of another question, and now that makes it like a survey. Like, what's your favorite color? Red. Or like, how did you beat the emotion of being a father, blah, 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 instead of just being like, well, you just got to do it.
Yeah.
Next question. It's like, well, the way and then you over-explain, and you really, and I value that.
Yeah.
Any other resources that you have other than Order of Man? Any other resources, books, podcasts, videos?
Dude,
I know.
About what?
About, let's say about speaking firstly, and then I want to, when we do the closeout, I definitely want to talk about books where people can go and find more resources on the right type of masculinity.
Yeah, dude, I don't know. I have one guy. It sounds super cheesy. Where's my phone? I have this guy I follow on Instagram.
Ooh, okay.
And he does coaching around speaking.
Oh my goodness, that's what I'm meaning.
And I follow him. Here's the drawback. I don't remember.
Remember
his name. So I'm gonna have to look through my follows.
Okay.
So
when you come across them, maybe send them my way.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I'll post it up in here as well. Yeah.
Sounds good. Sorry.
No, you're good. And as far as books, they already know. I tell them about Sovereignty, Masculinity Manifesto. They know about Dr. Robert Glover, No More Mr. Nice Guys, Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules of Life. Any other kind of obviously the Dichotomy of Leadership, the Man Up, Extreme Ownership, the Man Up by Bedros Keuilian, all these. Yeah. But do we have any other?
Something that I'd add, would you have As a Man Thinketh on that list?
Oh, by
James Allen?
Yeah, I don't have that. That's a good one.
I would.
As a Man Thinketh.
I've bought that book probably more than any other book.
That's
and
actually
I've gifted it like 100 times over.
Well, I have that on my Audible, As a Man Thinketh. Well, I didn't think. I thought his name was something else.
I thought it was James Allen. Jeez, am I?
No, you're
misquoting
probably
this guy?
right. You're probably right. I just, for some reason,
James Allen. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's.
yeah,
James Allen.
you know, you're most likely right, especially if you bought it a lot. Where is it? I had it here. All these are all The Way of Man, Unplugged Alpha. Oh, okay. You know, you are correct.
Is it James Allen?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was thinking of Man's Search for Meaning.
Oh yeah.
By Victor
Victor
Frankl.
Frankl.
That's
Yeah,
where I got
another
those,
great book.
Yeah, I got those
Yeah.
two confused.
You know, this is in line with me as a person. You know, I would say the 4 agreements or the 5 agreements.
Oh yeah, the 4 agreements. Yeah. And then
have you referenced that one already?
I
Okay.
haven't actually, but I'm
Okay.
glad that you mentioned that because that's a very
I think it's profound.
yeah
Yeah.
that book,
Yeah,
and then The
that-
Alchemist.
Yep.
There's another one towards that.
Yep.
Avenue.
Totally. And then one book probably of late that's been really just present on my mind is a little bit more on the business side, but like The Speed of Trust.
Speed of
Yeah,
Trust. I'll
Speed of
put that
Trust.
up on the screen. Speed of
Especially
Trust.
for anyone that does like business leadership, I'd say
Oh.
Speed of Trust is actually a really good book, as well as a book called The Extraordinary Leader. Here, I'll get an author for you. here.
Please. Speed of
Oh,
what was that?
man. See, and Gary John Bishop, do you reference any of his stuff?
What's some of his books?
So Gary John Bishop, Unfuck Yourself.
Oh
is
yeah.
one book.
Okay, I've never
Yeah.
mentioned them, but that's very popular. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love how you almost stutter every time
I
you
know,
cuss.
I'm trying not to.
For what reasons? Why? You just not know. You don't.
I think actually I take this from Ryan. So, and this is a good
He
example.
cusses though. I've heard him.
He
cuss.
does. But this is a good example of his coaching. So when we first started seeing podcasting, I was saying right all the time. How do you bring that up without maybe coming across like? How could he mention that to me in a powerful way versus just a critiquing way, right? So the standard critiquing way is, hey, Kipp, you say right all the time?
Yeah.
Just so you know. And
Yeah.
you're like, oh, yeah. And then I'll adjust it. But instead of saying that, what he did say, though, was, hey, Kipp, one thing that I've noticed is you have a tendency to say right. And by doing so, I think it might come across as a distraction and hurt your effectiveness in communicating to people.
Wow. Yeah, God
Right?
damn it, Ryan is good.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
you can't even get
damn.
mad at that. You're like, yeah,
I'm like,
shit.
The
Yeah.
mission, the intent, it's not about you. It's about
Yeah.
the desired outcome.
Yeah.
Right, of what we're
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to do. And is how you're showing up aligned to that desired outcome, yes or no? And if it's not, make these necessary adjustments, right? So,
So with
I'm all
cussing,
over
it's
it.
kind of like.
I actually think it's somewhat of a distraction.
Yeah.
right?
Or like a filler word that you could be using a
Yeah,
different, better word
exactly. Yeah, I mean, listen to Goggins. Next time you listen to Goggins' interview, it almost makes me laugh.
for. Always, he cusses a lot.
Because he drops the F-bomb like
All the
every other
time.
word.
Gary
and
V
it
does too,
almost-
doesn't
it
he?
almost just like, it distracts me.
Yeah,
I'll be
it
honest,
is.
It distracts me.
Yeah.
It almost makes me laugh at
Doesn't
him.
Gary V do that a lot too?
Yeah,
Like, I don't
yeah.
fucking know why people want him. Yeah.
That almost sounded like it too. So
Dude.
this one last book on
Yeah.
leadership that I really love.
Please.
How to Be Exceptional. And the author is Zinger and Folkman.
How. And I just want to screenshot it so I can put
Yeah.
it up on the screen. How to be exceptional.
Yeah. And the whole premise, and this, I think you might go, well, Kipp, I'm not in leadership position at my work, and so it's not applicable. Here's the rub of this concept.
Just so you know, lead in my world, it doesn't matter business or not,
Exactly.
prepare,
Titles or not.
lead, protect. You're leading your family, your tribe. Go ahead.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And let's be frank. Anyone that's leading, quote unquote, leading because they have been granted the authority, that's not we lead.
That's not
we
leading.
lead through influence and moral authority, not through
Force.
title.
Yeah, not by the
Force.
title. Yeah.
Exactly. So with that said, the concept of that book that I love, and statistically, so there's statistical numbers. That entire book is just like a data set of numbers, and then they made a book making sense of it. That's correct. So the whole premise is, if we did an assessment of you as an individual and your effectiveness as a leader, and we identified that, let's say, into 13 traits, okay? And let's say we rated your traits, 0 through 10,
yeah.
right? And we go through, and you have a couple 3s, and a couple 4s and maybe a couple 7s and an 8.
Mm-hmm.
Their focus is you focus on the 8. You don't focus on the 2s and the 3s.
You focus on
the highest
low
percentage of impact of you as an individual is for you to take what you're good at
and make it better.
Become exceptional at.
Interesting perspective.
Your impact gets stronger when you become exceptional in a given area than
Okay.
it does bringing up the gaps and just kind of being mediocre. And they use examples of this. So the most common example that I usually have a tendency to remember is Steve Jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
This guy will get quoted like he's a freaking saint. Oh, Steve Jobs once said,
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
He's so amazing. The guy was a complete asshole.
Yeah, I've heard actually.
Yeah, he's a complete asshole. But he's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
He was brilliant. And so people look past his jerkness
and see the brilliance
because of his brilliance. And so the premise of that book is that we need to become exceptional. Now, here's the other rub. What that 8 is, where you're good at, the probability is what? You're kind of passionate about it already.
Yeah,
otherwise
you wouldn't be 8 at it. Yeah.
You're already bought in that that's a valuable trait.
Yeah.
So for me to come to you and coach you up in that area, you're going to be all about it. You're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you're going to make me an all-star in this? Yeah, for sure. But if I go in an area that you're kind of then the probability of improvement is substantially less. Now, with that all said, of course, there's dichotomies to all things.
Mm-hmm.
Those lows can't be toxic things.
And here's
right?
my question, but those lows after I make those 8s, 10s, do I go back and make those 2s, 10s? Or do I just
Here's the irony of that question. When you become exceptional in key behaviors, they naturally will increase
the other ones
that are your lows.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Like a sub effect of it or whatever it's called. Okay.
Totally. So the whole premise of that book is to become more effective, you focus on. Now, religious guys listening, you could say, oh, well, these are your talents.
Yeah.
These are your God-given gifts.
God-given gifts.
And all that you're doing.
Discernment.
Yeah. And what you're doing is you're honoring them and bringing them out. And
interesting.
thus, it's in line with your personality more and everything else, right?
Wow. That actually resonates. I'm definitely going to be, that's going to be a pickup. Yeah. Dude, well, thank you so much. I mean, I could literally keep going. There was a couple more questions I wanted to ask you, but
no worries.
I don't want to keep going. I want to keep going, but I know you got.
Yeah.
For anyone who don't know, he does not live in Vegas. He just happened to come out here and happened to give me some of your time, which I'm very grateful for. I don't take that lightly. I did want to talk about, I heard on another podcast, how you handled, this is completely left field.
All right, I'm nervous.
How you handled your father's funeral. I just and I wasn't even going to go there,
you're
but
fine.
I want to go there. And then we'll end it with that because what you said and how you were able to take control of that situation is super inspirational. And it hit me more than you can imagine because those thoughts are always there. I'm like, how would I react? How would I react if my father ever went? What do I do?
Yeah.
And the fact that you took full charge of that, please explain, and then we can I'll let you go from there.
Well, and I'm kind of like, maybe I should have listened to that episode. Make sure I repeat the same thing.
No, it's okay. I want you to talk because what you did was impactful.
Yeah.
You took charge. You prepared the body.
Yeah.
You dug the stuff. You filled the stuff. You said you weren't gonna allow no backhoe to do it. You weren't gonna allow some random pallbearer to be doing it. Not pallbearer. The
pallbearers to carry the casket.
And then you said, you said that if you're not strong enough to carry the casket, then that's not your job.
Yeah, totally.
And you should be strong enough that you're not going to allow it to just be on some cart.
Yeah, and I don't know, to be honest with you, I have no idea where I got these strong, I got strong opinions by going to other funerals, and I was always annoyed that they had the damn cart with some wheels.
Yeah.
And they're like, and the honorary pallbearers are, and they like walk behind. And I'm like,
this isn't right.
Fuck that.
Yeah, this isn't right. They're fucking everything up. Like, they fuck everything, all the traditions, everything.
You're like, why aren't we doing that? Oh, because it's inconvenient? It's inconvenient for you to grab a shovel? Yeah. Like, I really feel, you got me all right up now. I really feel that
we take things that are uncomfortable and we associate them as you shouldn't have to experience it.
This uncomfortable situation.
Yeah. Like anything, really. I mean,
No, that anything.
All life is about
Comforts.
comfort. And we actually think like, oh, okay, that's the point of life is to be comfortable.
No. That's what's
There's
making
no
men
growth
weaker.
there,
That's what's
right?
yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, I mean, you know, to your ask, my take was really, how do I honor my dad? That's really what it came down to, right? Like, how do we do this funeral in a way that I can honor him? And honoring him is not shirking away my suffering or how I felt or my loss of him.
Mm-hmm.
Who's that about?
That's you. You're being
That's
selfish.
me.
Yeah.
I'm being selfish. So how do I honor him? I prepare his body for funeral. How do I honor him? I cover his casket with dirt with my siblings.
Yeah.
I do it. Not some elusive guy that got paid by the cemetery to
Who
do
has
it
no
on my behalf.
emotional-
That has no emotional connection to him.
Yeah.
Like, that's my job. And I honor and respect him by making sure I'm doing my job correctly, right? And so to your point, like, you know, whether it was preparing his body for burial, which I'll be honest, like I didn't know how that was going to go. Like, I've never dealt with that before. You know, us carrying his casket and then of course us backfilling. And dude, I tell you, it was awesome.
I would imagine.
It was awesome.
Enclosure at its finest.
My dad was a hard worker. One of the hardest working man.
You said he worked himself to sleep. You said your words. He used to work himself to sleep every night.
I don't exaggerate this. Like, I was raised on a farm, right? I know a lot of people who work. I know no one that worked at the level of how he worked, right? That's his legacy
Honorable,
to me.
Honorable.
That's his legacy to me. And the irony is, when we're backfilling his grave with my siblings, my brother goes, ironic that even in his death, Dad gets us to work, right? Because here we are, sweat at our brow,
and you're still doing that kind of work,
still working, right? But it was awesome. If you don't mind me sharing, like, what that was, like, you know, we pretended, right? We ended the funeral services, the conductor guy, you know, grabbed his little mic, and then we said lunch will be served at this building, you know, down the road or whatever, and everyone kind of slowly left, and we kept shovels hidden.
Oh.
And we just sat back and said goodbye, and eventually everyone left. And then we grabbed our shovels. We didn't go to the luncheon, and we stayed there with our dad, and we shoveled dirt.
Man.
And it was awesome, because after we shoveled our dirt, after we covered his grave, and this is my brother's call. It wasn't my call, it was my brother's call. But my brother goes, let's bless this ground. And so everyone that was there, we
gathered hands, started praying.
Hands in a circle, and we said one last prayer.
Beautiful. Oh,
I don't know where that came from. You know what I mean? Like, impromptu, felt what was right. Like, it wasn't some thing. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it wasn't planned, but it was the right thing. Like, I have no doubt of that, right? And it felt like the right way to honor.
It sounds like the only way to.
Totally.
Wow.
Totally.
I would like to give you your flowers on something, because I'm pretty certain it was a man named Jordan Peterson who said a way to gauge how masculine you are. I'm paraphrasing, but a way to gauge how masculine.
Get misquoted. Everyone's going to criticize you.
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing. A way to gauge on how masculine you are is to be the one person who is in control at his father's funeral.
Yeah.
Did Jordan Peterson not say that in the 12 Rules of Life?
I don't know if it was in the book. I watched that video, like someone added it to a video or something, and I've seen that video like literally like the last couple weeks.
And I'm pretty certain he was saying that he simplified it.
Like, because it's a form of service, right? That you have your stuff together well enough.
Yes, to be able to
handle it well, to serve those around you.
To still do your masculine duty. Yeah. So I want to give you your flowers on that, because even if you were, I think a lot of people misinterpret that and saying like a man shouldn't cry at his father's funeral. But I think what that means is, in my brain, is a man, as a man, we have a masculine duty to uphold.
Yeah.
There's a job that needs to be done. And if we're too busy being emotional wrecks and that we can't get the job done, then that is where we are lacking in masculinity. So not only did you get the job done, you got the job done plus more. Yeah. And you were able to still maintain that. I don't know if you were probably bawling your eyes out.
Dude, I totally was.
Yeah, but you were doing it.
Yeah.
You were making the moves happen, and I think that's a big testimony to being able to express emotions, but still get the job done. Totally. Still work through the emotions.
Which, and if you don't mind me adding, gives me what? Fulfillment.
100%.
And now I didn't walk away, because, like, if you don't mind, let's dissect, Peterson a little bit, right? Like, okay, well, I could have shown up at the funeral, took a seat in the front row, said, I'm not saying anything about my dad. I'm not going to talk because I'm the one grieving.
Yeah. It's me. I'm sad. I'm this.
Yeah. And I'm going to walk away not feeling like I honored him, not feeling fulfilled about how I showed up.
Yeah.
I'm going to feel like a victim.
Yeah, 100%.
And I'm going to walk away from that circumstance like, woe is me. That's exactly how I'd feel.
100%.
And that doesn't serve me. It doesn't even serve me, let alone anyone else.
100%. No. Were your kids around when you were doing this and they saw you do this?
All the boys, our kids stayed back. It was me, my siblings, a couple close friends, and our kids. And a few of the kids, and they
how
were
powerful.
They were
Good
us.
For you, man.
Yeah.
Because I always think about it from the perspective of, like, imagine, God forbid, a funeral happening. The kids are sad. The grandkids are sad. The wife is sad. And now you got this husband who's just as sad as all of them. And no one's making anything better.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not saying don't be sad. Get that right. I'm not saying don't be sad. Deal with your emotions and feel them. Totally. But still work. You have a job to do anyways.
Yeah. And you'll be better for doing that.
You'll be
job.
better. It'll make you tougher after.
Yeah.
And I know you're, and I think that situation was tragic, obviously, but at the end, everyone won. Your dad won because his sons and his grandkids were there the entire way. No strangers were handling him, nothing like that. Yeah. Your kids saw what real strength looks like.
Yeah.
It's working through pain and working through suffering. That is true strength. More than like, I have a big car and a big dick. Like, that's not strength. Yeah. That's true strength. Is I'm suffering. I'm in the pits of it, and I'm still working through it. There's a fucking shovel in my hand. That's a lesson.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your wife saw you. Was you with Asia? I'm still at the time.
Yeah.
I'm sure your wife saw you in that masculine role as well, as opposed to if you were just sitting next to her crying the entire time. Like, she's gonna be there for you, but she's just gonna be like, nothing's happening. Nothing's getting done.
Yeah.
Everyone's just sad. Nothing's moving.
Yeah. And we outsourced it to some elusive company that's there because we paid them money. Like, really?
No, man. I think that how you did it was wonderful, and that stuck with me. I wasn't gonna let you go here without asking you about that and giving you credit on that and saying that sole perspective. I literally clipped it and I sent it to my buddy because he's going through some issues right now, and actually his father had just passed away 3-4 months ago. He killed himself.
Yeah.
It was a whole tragic situation. However, he was on that same boat where he went, and he was the one that was kind of strong.
Totally.
And everyone looked at him like he was crazy. He's like, dude, your dad's crying. I mean, your dad's passed away in this tragic way, and you're like, okay?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I'm not okay. There's just I have to do a job. I got my sisters, I got my mom. I have to do a job.
Yeah.
And I just want you to know that resonated with me. And I think that I'm going to, God, far from now, I want to follow in that same footsteps. I think I want to do that same thing.
Yeah. I already told my wife the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, when I die, here's some speculation.
Here's the steps.
Family's not hiding shit. No sitting back sobbing. I want, back to your point, pallbearers carry my casket. If you're not strong enough, then you're old fuck and you don't belong there. You know what I mean? And let's do it right.
Man. Well, buddy, I think we've covered everything.
Cool, man.
Thank you again for coming in.
Of course.
tell the guys where they could find you. Any final words, final messages where you want to get your point out, anything like that?
Oh man, we covered enough.
We did.
And plus, if I go start some
know.
tangent, then we'll be in there another 30 minutes. No,
where can the guys find you?
You can primarily on social media, just on Instagram at Kipp Sorensen, and that's 2 P's, so KippSorensen. And then to learn more about the Orderman podcast, they can just go to orderman.com, and that will connect you to Iron Council as
That's
well.
Crazy
As
hearing you say this in my pocket. I hear that every night, every time you
go
edit.
to Facebook.com/group/Orderman.
If you want to find Ryan Mickler, you can find him at his new book, Masculinity Manifesto. We have the Iron Council open for one more week, and it's gonna close. All right, buddy. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you, bud. Thank you. Awesome. You guys, it's been another episode. Appreciate it. Peace.